It's clobbering time, clobberers. Welcome to my first of what I hope will be many videos. I hope to keep it relatively short. If you are not familiar with the channel Clobbering Times, I was on for 11 years on a platform called Blog Talk Radio until about a year ago. I did 700 episodes there, and I've moved to YouTube again a little bit under a year ago. So I've been at this for about 12 years now, for a little over 12 years, and 800 some odd episodes, 840 something episodes. And but tonight, I mostly live stream, as you know, but tonight or today, I should say, I've decided to do a bit of a video. I'm going to try to do some short videos that are some maybe some opinion pieces about various things. I, of course, as you can infer from the title, talk about comic books a lot. I love comics big time on Monday nights, 8 p.m. Central Standard Time in the U.S. I do Monday Night Mark C. Comics Talk, which I talk about, well, comics, of course. And I'll be doing that tonight as well, every night. On Wednesday nights, I do an open geek talk type of thing where we just anything goes. Thursday, and that's, of course, also 8 Central. Thursdays, 8 p.m., 1 p.m., I should say. I gather what I call the Global Geek Gang, where we geek out, a gigantic panel of geeks, talk about various topics, and just have a good time. And you're all cordially invited to join those live streams, please. Saturday nights, as a lover of Star Trek, my wonderful first officer, the extraordinary R.M. Raquel Briggs, and I bring you Star Trek reviews. We're reviewing all of Star Trek, 1966 to 2005 is what I meant to say. And we've just finished reviewing Star Trek, the original series, and we're moving on to Star Trek, the animated series. It will be TNG. Of course, the movies, DS9, Voyager, and Enterprise as well, all of real, legitimate Star Trek. I mean, of course, I talked about many other things and guest on many other shows and have a wonderful time streaming on YouTube. It's just an extraordinary, a wonderland of fun geek talk for those of us who like to talk about the things we enjoy. And I'm a geek of 50 plus years and been doing this for a long time. I've been in the comic book business. And again, as I said, I love the art form of comic books. And so today, as for my first video, I want to read from an article that I wrote a year ago that's up on my Clobber Times Baxter Building Basement Facebook group, which I urge you to join if you'd like to hang out. If you do Facebook, talking comics and stuff. And by the way, I hope you will, if you have not already, please consider subscribing to this channel and hitting that like button for this video if you like it. If you don't, there's a dislike button as well. But thank you for being here, whether you're here for whatever reason you're here, and I hope it's because you're a fan of Astro City as I am. And so I'm going to read a bit of an article that I'm going to read an article that I wrote, like I said, about a year ago for the 25th anniversary of one of the greatest comics ever made, in my opinion. That's Kurt Busiek's Astro City. So I'm going to get on with it now and try to get this done as quickly as I can. It's I read myself clumsily, as I read anyone else clumsily. So I'll be stumbling all over myself a bit, I'm sure, but I will try to get the point across as well as I can. And I apologize in advance for any mistakes I may make. So here we go. 25 years in the big city. Welcome to Astro City. Wow. Whoa. This summer, meaning last summer, of course, it's been almost a year since I wrote this, marks the 25th anniversary of one of the greatest comics ever produced in the 20th and 21st centuries, Kurt Busiek's Astro City. What a ride it's been. I've said this from time to time, fairly infrequently over the years, but I think it must be reiterated every once in a while. If you're a long-time comic book fan, especially one of the superhero pulp fantasy genres as represented by DC, Marvel, and other various comic book companies over the decades, and you've never read Kurt Busiek's Astro City, what are you doing with your life? Just kidding, of course. If you have a life, that is a wonderful thing. I'm told, and I've heard anyway, that that's a wonderful thing to have. In all seriousness, you could do a lot worse than to look into Astro City. There's plenty to keep you reading for a good while, if it catches your interest, of course. Astro City fans have varying views, I'm sure, on which of the many AC stories or sagas are the cream of the crop. But anyone who did stick with the series for a good bit will tell you, well, I can't speak for anyone else, just myself as a gigantic Astro City fan, that out of the 111 issues produced by various publishers over its 25-year run, some of them stand out as pure comic book masterpieces, in my opinion, of course, and many at least stand out as truly extraordinary works, top of the medium. Many more are certainly exceptional works, worthy of high praise and much attention. A smaller number are good or above average fare to varying degrees, and some are medium fare, while others, an even smaller number, are borderline mediocre to slightly flawed. I mentioned all this because most of the lesser quality AC content was much later in the 52 issue. What is it with 52 in DC Comics? That number 52. I don't know. Vertigo run of 2013 through 2018, which did have some excellent stuff, though. It was just not as consistent as a series overall. Still, there was always such a high bar for AC. A mediocre story by its standards is usually head and shoulders above most of the dead tree twaddle investing comic book racks over the past 2+ decades, especially in my opinion, of the past 5, 6, 7 years. I can't really think of an out-and-out bad or abysmal issue of Astro City, and I've read them all. Still, that hardly means that there aren't others, out there who think of issues they disliked. I have some friends who were not overly pleased with the Vertigo run. It was admittedly a hit or miss. And this, of course, these are the covers of the beautiful Astro City covers by the great Alex Ross, who does wonderful work. He, of course, is sort of a co-creator and a co-designer of the series, as well as he did just about all of the covers for the series. And that's the 1995 miniseries, which was just extraordinary. In fact, the first miniseries, which debuted in 1995, is nothing short of brilliant. In my opinion, it's just extraordinary. The miniseries is the perfect starting point for anyone who is curious. I remember the day I bought AC #1. I don't know, and I do. I remember. I have a terrible old man's memory, but I remember where I was and everything. The comic shop I bought it at. Fresh in my memory, the greatness of Busiek and Ross's Marvels, which of course is a masterpiece as well. Great comic. If you've not picked up Kurt Busiek and Alex Ross's Marvels, please do so if you want to read an extraordinary work. Picking up this new miniseries by them, covers and character designs by Ross, interior by Brent Anderson, who was phenomenal and a great co-creator and artist on the series. Was, of course, a no-brainer. Yep, there's no way I wasn't going to be getting that. I looked forward to it, didn't know what it was going to be, and that first issue blew me away. Some things the uninitiated should know about Kurt Busiek's Astro City. What is it? Is it a simple superhero knockoff comic? Well, yes and no. That is far too simplistic a way to describe it. Astro City is a fictional place such as sort of an amalgam of Marvel's New York, DC's Metropolis, Gotham City, Central City, Star City, etc., all rolled into one, just as in Marvel and DC Comics. Just as in Marvel and DC Comics, I should have inflected. Most of the action seems to take place and most of the super beings seem to inhabit the aforementioned cities, though though nowhere near always. In Astro City, the comet does travel quite a bit. In other words, not everything takes place in Astro City. That's the title of the series. Sort of, I guess, if someone did a series called Metropolis, it would be feature various superheroes or what have you. But Astro City is just, for some reason, the title given to the series. Doesn't every single thing does not take place there, but with Marvel's New York, almost all of their superheroes, started out in New York. So I think that's kind of the point. As you can see there's a map of Astro City, which you can find easily enough. Yeah, well, it would be a great to be a tourist at Astro City. First place I'd visit, Mount Kirby. Yeah. But I want to live on Mount Kirby, as I say in there. Astro City, the comic, is, of course, a broader canvas. Its simple sort of narrative is to employ various superhero genre tropes, concepts, and constructs in stories that will ring familiar without feeling stale or worn, by using characters that are, in some cases, and in quotations, of course, knockoffs, i.e., archetypes of established iconic characters, heroes and villains, and many that are amalgamations of various well-known and in some cases obscure characters. Busiek always manages to keep things fresh and compelling. You may feel like you could have been here before, but not quite in the same way. Not quite in the same way. Exactly. He always puts a nice spin or twist on older idioms. It just works, and you just float along well with it. And everyone forgive my clunky writing. I guess I'm not much of a writer. I'm with that. I write a lot, and then yet not a writer. Just like to put down the things I think and feel. And of course, any of you out there with a writing training can look at me, and I will understand the cringing. This is, of course, a shot of Brent Anderson's wonderful rendering of Samaritan. Is basically Astro City's Superman, as drawn by series eternal interior artist Brent Anderson, who did the series forever until somewhere toward the end, in the middle and end of the Vertigo run, when health issues, necessitated some fill-in artists. But Brent Anderson is very much a part of Astro City. One example would be AC's most recognizable hero, Samaritan, as you saw in the picture just now by Brent Anderson. Again, there he is, that's Samaritan. He's one example of the type of characters you're going to see. On the surface, he seems to be just another in a long line of Superman ciphers, but he differs from Supes in some fairly substantial ways. This allows Busiek and Anderson to tell stories with him that they could never do with the real Supes. They couldn't do it with the real Superman. A lot of the things they do with Samaritan, even though you can go, yeah, he's Superman in a lot of ways. Some more beautiful Alex Ross art. That's the cover for featuring the Confessor and the sidekick Altar Boy. Wonderful stuff. The result has been, in most cases, sheer genius, and I really mean that. He's managed to create a deep and very well-conceived character out of what easily could have been a brazen, shallow knockoff. Meaning, of course, of all of the characters he uses, but in that case, Samaritan. The Confessor is Batman, sort of, and yet he's very, very different. In fact, so much so he could not only tell some Batman-like stories with him, he could also do some Batman-like stories with other characters in the series, which he has, such as Jack in the Box, for example. There's some Spider-Man elements to Jack in the Box. There's a lot of Batman elements to him. He's really done such a wonderful job, Busiek and Ross and Anderson, of mixing it up to where they really don't just look like carbon copies. I mean, Samaritan comes the closest, but many of the other ones are definitely much very removed from that. And don't take his clown-like looked for granted. Jack in the Box is a straight up badass, as I say, and a brilliant character, a legacy character in a sense. There you see the first family, Astro City's first family. What do you mean first family? FF. Yes, they're very much the Fantastic Four. The first family is basically the Fantastic Four. Again, Busiek brilliantly manages to infuse just enough differing character traits to give them depth and make it possible to do great Fantastic Four FF-like stories if he chooses to. And he's used them a bit, of course, and to wonderful effect. You know, when you read an AC story with them, with them, meaning I guess with these characters, who they are supposed to represent, but it's so well done it doesn't matter. You simply go with it because you know you're going to get something new mixed in with something old to make something interesting, entertaining, and often deep and substantive. Astro City is first and foremost character driven, and yet the stories are always just as potent and amazingly imaginative. Many of the most famous superheroes and the ideas and tropes that define them have been dealt with in Astro City brilliantly on many occasions. So much so that, well, like I said, you just go with it. If you're savvy at all about the comic book industry and its methods and practices, you know that even though so much of Astro City borrows from a great wellspring of sources to craft its extraordinarily imaginative narrative, blah, 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 narrative twist on established tropes and idioms, you just smile and enjoy it in the knowledge that the beloved characters and universes that they inhabit will never be this good again. Never be this good again, sadly. Basically, I fumble a lot. I'm sorry, folks. I stumble a lot. I get ahead of myself, and I apologize. Basically, you're getting a high-quality take with only some of the names and colors changed. It's all just a great gift to the reader. I need to learn how to read myself better, folks. I do apologize. I hope this doesn't bother you too much. Kurt Busiek alive, his apocalyptic life. There is a sort of Philip Jose Farmer feel to Astro City. Not his more hardcore stuff, meaning Farmer, but some of his Walt Newton flavor is there. Maybe that's just me, but I've often wondered if Busiek has read some Farmer. Even Alan Moore referenced Farmer in his intro to Frank Miller's Dark Knight Returns trade paperback. For those of you not familiar with Philip Jose Farmer, it's too complicated to go into here. Philip Jose Farmer's biography he wrote of Lord Greystoke. Yes, he was real, according to this book. This is the edition I have, by the way. Tarzan Alive, great book. He also wrote Doc Savage's Apocalyptic Life. Farmer's Doc Savage's Apocalyptic Life. Yes, old Clark Savage Jr. was as real as Tarzan of the Apes. And Astro City reminds me a lot of Farmer. For Astro City, though, characterization is the key to all of Astro City, in my opinion. It is what fuels the captivating imaginative stories. I'm sorry, I hate the way I read this, but I'm just going to go on, and I hope the point will get across to everyone. And again, just please bear with me. If you're still bearing with me, I appreciate you, by the way. It is what fuels the captivating imaginative stories. As I've said, character-driven. Not all of the stories focus on the superheroes. If you've read Marvels by Busiek and Ross, you'll be familiar with a story structure that seemingly invented. They seemingly invented. I have my screen far back, by the way, so sorry. Anyway, why make excuses? If you're still with me, I appreciate you, and if you're not, then I understand. You'll be familiar with a story structure that they seemingly, I don't know about even seemingly, I think Busiek did invent this story narrative for comic books. I believe it. Or if not, definitely perfected. No, I'm going to go, unless someone can show me differently, I think Busiek and Ross for Marvels perfected this narrative of storytelling that they used in, quite a bit in Astro City. They employed it quite a bit, which is a story taking place in a fantasy superhero universe from the perspective of the everyday average person on the street, if you will. It varies. It's always a nice break in the storytelling. It's also a fascinating concept to be given a first-hand tour of a superhero fantasy pulp universe, to experience what it's like to live in one of those crazy Marvel or DC realities. Well, we've read about all of our geek lives. Some of those stories are amongst the greatest AC has to offer. I think one of the best, most intriguing traits of Astro City is that incredible ability it has to transport you into its reality so seamlessly. When you read an issue of AC, you don't just get a compelling, entertaining story about interesting characters. You get a journey into that world. You get a grand tour. You feel what it's like to live in a superhero universe. That's one of AC's most endearing aspects. You feel it, and it feels real. No matter how out there the plot is, or for that matter, how out there the characters look. I mean, they do look like, all the silly tropes of superhero comics are there in the best endearing way possible. I mean that. Alan Moore's Deconstructions and Other Works versus Astro City. And, of course, a comic book masterpiece that needs no introduction. That is Watchmen. Alan Moore and Dave Gibbons' Watchmen. It's a wonderful work, and I do love it, folks. One of the things that distinguishes Astro City is quite possibly the best usage of the superhero genre within its accepted, normal, traditional framework or parameters, is the very fact that Busiek is always perfectly comfortable, or so it would seem to this observer, not sure if he'd agree, working within such framework. Alan Moore has walked both sides of that line. He pretty much pioneered, along with Frank Miller, for better or worse, the deconstruction of the superhero myth. In comics, that is. There were some novels written before his time, like Robert Myers, Robert Myers, Super Folks, which Moore occasionally somewhat liberally borrowed from. But what made Moore so brilliant was simply that he could write ingenious stories that deconstruct the superhero, like Marvel/Miracle Man or Watchmen, or that while he could do that, he also wrote within those confines quite well with classics like Superman Annual Number 11 for the Man Who Has Everything, or the classic Farewell to the Silver Bronze Age Superman, Superman Whatever Happened to the Man of Tomorrow, which of course is a masterpiece, as well as that annual Love Them Both, two of the greatest comics ever written. There were, of course, many others that he did. The wonderful, yet tragically never finished 1963 for Image Comics, and his extraordinary Superman in Disguise series of the 90s, Supreme. All wonderful works, and they're within the parameters of standard superhero genre comic books. Alan Moore says goodbye to the wonderful, sorely missed Superman mythos of the Golden, Silver, and Bronze Age. Sad but brilliant. It was indeed great stuff. Why dare to mention Kurt Busiek's Astro City in the same breath with the pinnacle of Alan Moore's work, you ask? You probably don't ask, but I'm saying that anyway. Well, if you didn't ask, let's pretend that you did. I do that because Astro City, especially at its finest, manages to do what both sides of Moore's coin does. It never strays into the deconstruction lane. At least in my opinion, it doesn't. But sometimes it gets mighty close. And yet, though there is the occasional swerve, it stays in that orthodox superhero dwelling while still managing to be just as poignant, substantive, and challenging as anything Moore has ever done, in my opinion. In other words, it asks most of the same questions that Watchmen or Marvel/Miracle Man does, and yet never takes the deconstructionist shortcut of playing footsie with nihilism at all, or nihilism and dark, depressing, brooding, grim, gritty stuff, as they say. AC never succumbs to repulsive ugliness. Does that mean that it's never dark? No. It's plenty dark at times. It's plenty dark at times. But there is a difference between dark and deconstruction. You can tell a dark superhero story and maintain respect for the genre. It's tricky, but a clever writer can do it. Busiek, as a writer, is an extraordinarily clever writer, in fact. You cannot tell a deconstructionist superhero story and maintain respect for the genre. Oh, it could be a great piece of work, as Watchmen is, but respect simply cannot, pretty much by definition, be included in the recipe. It might taste great at first, but it'll be poison. Telling a superhero story or a story that takes place in a superhero universe and making it every bit as brilliant and substantial as Watchmen is something that only a handful of writers have ever done. Busiek is one of them, and his Astro City is easily the best example of this. Again, that's my opinion, of course. As you all know, I don't know why I reiterate that, but AC can be just as heavy and gut-wrenching as Watchmen or Miller's Dark Knight on one page, and remind us on the very next page that you're still reading a comic book about superheroes, a story within a world in which animals can talk, people can defy gravity in all of the ludicrous ways that we've seen in mainstream comics, and can never get enough of it. All of the outrageously dopey things we're used to in superhero comics are perfectly acceptable in this world. It all blends seamlessly together to form a brightly colored tapestry of funny book goodness that you just buy into, as you did when you were 10 years old. This is a world where silly costumes abound and silly names ride hand in hand, sorry, with them, and yet its characters feel real, and its stories often make you think, cry, laugh, and dream. You feel it, you experience it. It just works. Watchmen shows you what it would be like if super beings and costume crime fighters existed in the real world, and it resonated because it achieved that goal very well. AC achieves, in my opinion, an even more lofty goal. Astro City takes the real world into its own. It doesn't inject the fantasy world into the real world the way Watchmen does. It takes that actual real world and injects it into the fantasy world brilliantly. Astro City takes you into a fantasy world universe of superpowers, monsters, and magic, a world of super science and pretty much every crazy out of this world fantasy concept ever conceived of by human writers, all crossing over into a mind-boggling hodgepodge of reality and fantasy. And it does it so well, you feel like you're really there. Watchmen shows you a possible reality. And you know it's exposing how silly and childish how a childish imagination can be. However, with Watchmen, the fun isn't there. Granted, it's not supposed to be. That's not the point. And that's okay. I still love AC. I still love it. Excuse me. I still love it. By the way, I really do love Watchmen. It's one of my all-time favorite things ever. I love it. I still love it. AC puts you in a fantasy. It makes you believe it because you want to, because the fun's there. Scary times, sure. Excuse me. Scary sometimes, sure. Dark sometimes, sure. But also fun and exhilarating at times. Inspiring that, my friend, is, in my opinion, sorry, true brilliance. My reading is not true brilliance, but I think Astro City is. Not to mention highly entertaining. And I say again, I beg your forgiveness for my clunky reading of my own writings. Just tells you whatever you need to know about me being an idiot. Alex Ross covers were always a great starting point when you picked up the latest issue of Astro City, by the way. Yes. I'm sorry for all the weird-looking Facebook pop-up messages. I'm reading this from my Facebook. Basically, Astro City is a great comic, pure and simple, when at its best. Great superhero stories from angles you'd never thought of, and great stories about people who live in those universes. It balances beautifully between those two story structures, and that, in my view, is what has made it so special for 25 years. Splash page from In Dreams, the first story in the very first issue of the first miniseries. The very first issue of Astro City that hit the stands in 1985, number one of the 6-issue miniseries, In Dreams, in one of the many masterworks by Busiek and Anderson, sheer brilliance. Needless to say, I was hooked, and I'd love to tell you all about it, but I think you should. But I'd love for you to read it all yourself. The Astro City 1/2 issue, which was at first marketed as a mail-in gimmick through Wizard magazine. Remember that thing? Was later reprinted in the second AC trade paperback, Confessions. The story in Astro City 1/2, The Nearness of You, is one of the greatest single comic book stories of all time. It's in my top 5, maybe top 2 or 3. It is simply a masterpiece. It does come with the rather unique requirement that the reader be fairly well schooled or versed in the ways of the superhero comic genre, especially things like Crisis on Infinite Earths. Some lovely Brent Anderson art there. Just looking at this page from the masterpiece, The Nearness of You, makes me tear up. Again, art by the great Brent Anderson. The Nearness of You is probably the only comic book story, or at least one of the very few, that made this grumpy old bastard cry when I first read it. As a much younger grumpy old bastard, 25 years ago, and still does. 25 years later, it still does. I don't begrudge Busiek for writing a sequel to it in his final issues of the Vertigo run, which was the last. Well, we'll probably see of AC, but I hope not. But he didn't get anywhere nearness to his original all-time classic in AC 1/2. Not even close. It was okay. But not even close. Look, I put the pictures of the miniseries again on here. I forgot I did that. Oh, well, it's on there twice, but they're great covers. Whatever. The first Astro City miniseries, all of the 25 years ago, was really amazing. I cannot recommend it enough. If you read that and AC 1/2 and are not hooked, or at least interested in reading more, it's probably just not the comic for you. And hey, to each his own and all that. Let's see here. Sorry about that. I'm going to go as quick as we can here, folks. The regular Astro City series that began not long after the miniseries concluded was just as wonderful as the miniseries, beautifully and powerfully picking up where the miniseries left off. It ran for 22 issues from 1996 to 2000, roughly. Some great stuff all throughout this amazing run. Standouts for me, the whole Confessor story arc, later compiled in the second trade paperback entitled Confessions. It's truly incredible, as is the Steeljack arc. Fortunately, all of that run has been compiled into trades and are relatively inexpensive and easy to find. That's a great thing about Astro City. You should be able to find them easily if you are interested. But always start at the beginning, see if it grabs your interest. Astro City's first family, nudge there. That's Astro City's FF. Yeah, I put some pictures in there twice. It looks like, or maybe this is a glitch on Facebook. At this point, as you can imagine, with an ongoing series that puts out a meager 22 issues in 5+ years, a new issue of Astro City became something of a rare sight, and a pleasant surprise. at the comic book rack after the first ongoing series ended. Kurt Busiek, quite understandably, became somewhat in demand as a writer. He took on the writing chores for the Avengers, with George Perez. There was also an Avengers Forever 12-issue series. He also did a great series I love that I forget to mention here. Was it Untold Tales of Spider-Man in the 90s? He also co-created Thunderbolts for Marvel. When asked often about the status of Astro City, his health was often cited back then in the comics press as a possible reason for the long delays on AC. And yet, as many a fan would point out, that doesn't seem to affect his output on Avengers and Thunderbolts and other titles. Let's all be fair about this. A man's got to make a living, and after all. And back then, even though Busiek owns and co-owns AC, Marvel books still outsold Image and Homage titles, by a good bit, if I remember right. Well, wow. Remember when mainstream comics actually sold lots? Well, yeah, that was been a while, hasn't it? Remember when there was actually something called sales with mainstream comics? Yeah. Anyway, here's some wonderful covers by Alex Ross from some great issues of Astro City. Of the regular series. There were also a great many specials that were extraordinary. My favorite of them being Astro City Special, Samaritan, the Eagle, and the Mountain under the Wildstorm banner. Another masterwork. What a brilliant story. I'll just leave it at that. You got to read it to believe it. But man, I'm telling you, oh well. Well, it was just great. Just saying. Later, there were some more specials and a few miniseries, but most of which, of course, are excellent. Oh, well, God, this is a wonderful one right here. Again, look at all this wonderful, beautiful Alex Ross art. The series was revived in 2013 for DC's Vertigo line. And some of the multi-part stories early on were truly exceptional. Things became hit or miss. This is my opinion. I still love the comic. Don't get me wrong. And I would never want like Kurt Busiek or any of the people who work on the book think I'm trashing in any way, because I don't. Again, it's just there's so many wonderful, great ones. You can't keep that up all the time. And a one that comes off as maybe a bit of a lesser story to some of us who love the comic or still like that story. It's still good. I mean, and I was so happy to have it back, and it was coming out on a fairly timely basis, which was not the case in the early days. But the series was revived into DC's Vertigo line. Some of the multi-part was exceptional. Things became hit or miss with the series. If I'm being honest, matters were probably not helped by the absence of Brent Anderson. He did miss some, of course, due to health issues, from what I remember. Which of course couldn't be helped. So yeah, there were different artists to see. Mr. Anderson. But still, that's just because we really love his work. So yeah. Can't say, still. Nevertheless, I stuck with the series through thin and thinner. It was never so far gone as to make me ever, even consider dropping the title, because I still liked it. I can't say the same for some of my friends. I've had a couple of friends that kind of bowed out, but most of them stayed with it. There were definitely some low points. I guess again, it's in comparison to some of how great. That's a testament how great this comic is. It's so many great ones, but there's still some of the greatest stories, especially early on. Because anyway, that's not here to there. We're not here to tear anything down, and I don't want anyone to think that, because I love this comic so much. Astro City. Then, of course, after the 52 issues, what is it again? What is it with the number 52 in DC? Astro City was gone, and the bumpy ride of the Vertigo run, what may have been, I was sad to see it end. In the final ish, I read that Kurt Busiek was planning to a spate of quote-unquote graphic novels for 2019. Now here we are in 2021. I hope that's still on the table. But obviously, they never materialized, or at least not of yet. So I sure hope he he gets it back. Hope we get it back soon. Hope he brings it back. And then some fine covers from the Vertigo run right there. And I think we're, coming to the end. Let's see here. Trying to get to the end of this thing, and then won't let me. Okay, let's see. Did something wrong. Well, Facebook's being a jagoff. So anyway, you know what? Look, I can't. I don't know if I can read the rest of the article because it's being so stupid. Facebook is being idiotic. You suck, Facebook. What else is new? Look, it's going backwards. I'm trying to go down. Look, I want to thank everyone who watched this video. I'm going to go ahead and just end it here by saying, Astro City is a masterpiece. That's simple. It's just an extraordinary use of the medium. And I've gone for 40 minutes. I don't know if anyone's even going to want to watch this video. If you have, I thank you so much. Just go check out the first mini-series if you can, and see what you think. I think if you read those few, at least that first one there, and you don't, and it doesn't do it for you, then there's no point in continuing. But I think most people will like it. This is just, especially in today's age where there's so little that's any good. There's so little good stuff out there. So I want to thank anyone who watched this video. Please, if you're new to the channel, please join us for our live streams that we do on Monday nights. Again, tonight I have one tonight at 8 p.m. Central. I'm talking to the wonderful Purple Valkyrie about comic book supervillains, but we talk comics on Monday nights, 8 p.m. Central. Open Geek Talk, 8 p.m. Central on Wednesday nights. 1 p.m. Central, the Global Geek Gang assembles to geek out. And on Saturday nights, 9 p.m. Central, reviewing all of Star Trek, starting the animated series and moving behind, because we've already done the original. And that's what we have. You could go to my channel and check out all my different videos in the playlist and things like that. And so until then, I hope you at least enjoyed this video in some way. If you didn't, I don't blame you, because I messed it all up and I had some problems with Facebook there. But that's my basic take and overlook on Astro City. If you're a fan, please leave comments in below and tell me what you think about it. Until then, you are now leaving Astro City. Please drive carefully and keep on clobbering. Thank you. Have a wonderful day. Oops. Now, thank you and have a wonderful day.